Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about stamps. I've actually got books lined up all in front of me. They're actual purchases that I've made at estate sales or from pickers or from calls and people calling me. We're going to show you some of what I purchased. It's hard just to jump into stamps and explain a lot, but I'm going to try and show you how to purchase them in bulk first, and then we're going to probably delve into a couple more videos here on key ones to look for, and then I'll give you a bunch of screenshots on that one here. The biggest thing is running into them and knowing which big binders to find when you're first starting off. Because, again, you're not going to be looking for individual stamps. You're going to be looking for big collections or books like this that have, like, multiple stamps in them here. So I'm going to cut over and we're going to zoom in here. And I'm going to go from there and we're going to show you them. But before I do that, I'm just going to shout out to this here. Obviously, the green screen is on. Let's cut off the green screen. Let's cut it off for just a second here. Okay, so we should be back now, and the green screen is off, and you can see the green. Buy yourself a set of vintage stamp price guides. Get the out-of-dated ones from the 70s or 80s or something. The majority of stamps that you are going to find are not going to be new that are worth money. It's always going to be the old ones for the most part. There's some errors and stuff like that, but a common book's not going to point those out to you at all. The new ones, it's not going to matter. It's not going to have the errors in it. Those are a whole different line. So get yourself a set, and they're usually like 4 big books. Now this is a Minkus. There's a Stanley Gibbons and a Harris and Sons. Harris and Sons is probably the one you want, or like a Scott's. But I have a couple of each, just because sometimes the British sites that we deal with and some of the stamp sites like Hubstamp and things like that want the British numbers on some of these too if you're selling to the British market. So I do buy some of the other ones. I wouldn't worry about that at all. Get one that has the American numbers on them. If you're going to get one, you can get a whole set of all 4, and they're big thick books for like 15 or 20 bucks. You could probably find a set locally even if you really want to hunt around. What you're wanting out of these are the information for the dating. Once you know the date on something, you can just pop up on eBay and instantly tell how much it's worth right off the bat. The prices in these books, even the newer ones, are not going to be what you get out of them. Even if the book just came out, it's the current version of the price guide. The prices that you see in the guides just don't compare to what anything goes for in the stamp category on eBay, in my personal experience from doing stamps since I was like 7. So again, I only use these to ID them. And you know, you can't know every stamp. There's just so many of them that you need some form. It'll help you with centering in. I know you can do this online, but I have better luck looking this way. And I've seen so many stamps that I'm usually pretty good on the country and dating it anyway. But this has been a big plus in the past. As I said, I've kept a copy of pretty much every version of these you can get, brand-wise. Minkus, Stanley Gibbons, Scott's, Harrison and Son and stuff. But anyway, let me switch over to a tripod, and we're going to be right back. Okay, so now here we are. This is some of the stamp books that I actually purchased. What you don't want to do are buy like these little ones thinking you're going to get something just because it looks early and it has a few stamps in it. This one doesn't have hardly any in it, honestly. This is just an example, though. Again, I buy in big, huge bulk. So these I end up getting once in a blue moon. I don't mess with stuff like that. Some of these ones, too. This isn't a pricey stamp book, in all honesty. This is a cheaper version. When you're looking at stamps, the biggest thing you want to do is look at the beginning of every stamp book you look for first. Look for how many vintage early stamps below 1900 you see in it. The earlier the stamp, the better the book probably, or the better the stamp in general. So someone's taken out all the high dollar ones in here. In fact, there's hardly any this far back. So this one I bought in a bulk again, so I only got a couple bucks into it. For the most part, there's not much in this book, so ignore prices in the books. Don't worry if they've got magic glassine or anything like that covering up the stamps like that. That's a protection. Doesn't mean they're valuable either. You see a bunch of just junk ones in here that they've done this to. Somebody has literally taken out most of the good ones in here, so that's what you want to look for. Nothing in here is too spectacular. I mean, this is like a $20 book I'd probably get out of this if I'm lucky. Again, I bought it in big bulk. I bought it for other stuff that was with it. Again, see, most of the part, all the good ones are gone out of here. Special delivery, that's nothing. You know, airmails for the most part, nothing. Parcel post. You just want to pay attention to the old stuff in the books for the most part. Commemoratives don't mean a whole lot. There's nothing special in this one. So this is another one that would be something you don't want to mess with. Again, on the lines of these little ones. This is just another little one. In fact, something's fallen out of it. Again, loose stamps or whatever the case may be. This is just common stuff. These type of books are just for junks. This is just for like kids. It's not a true stamp collector book. Obviously, it's for stamps, but it's not the ones you want. There's levels of them. This is for like a kid starting off into it. You want the ones that have extensive selections for one specific country. And I'm going to show you my Australian collection, or part of it here, just to give you an idea. Now, there are some good stamps in here in the China section, just because at the time when these were out, they were very common. They have since changed in the value on some of these. So some of the stamps in here have some value. One thing, too, to look at here, this is a perforated stamp. Let's see how close we can get so you can see a little better. This is a perforated stamp, meaning that it has little holes punched in it so you can separate the stamp. Here is an imperforated stamp, meaning it has no punch marks. You'll have to cut it with scissors to get these apart. Those are two distinguishing factors you will see. This one has a little bit of value because of the China, but if it wasn't for that, there's hardly anything of real good value in here. Even the ones that you would think that might be holding some value or look really old just aren't that valuable in the book. And I'm going to show you the difference here in a few minutes. We're going to pull out from some stock books here that I've purchased, as well as some from my collection. Again, these are just typical junk assortments. Pass these up every time you see them, just like this. The China one I know something about. For the most part, you're going to think there's some good ones in there, and there probably isn't for 95% of these types of albums. So that's just another example. Don't mess with these too much at all. Again, you might be fooled by what it looks like in there, by how good the stamps you would think looks. Here's another one. Now, this one had a couple in it, but again, you're not going to know that. So it's just typical. This one's a decent one up there. Let's see if we can get it a little closer so you can see. In fact, why don't we zoom in just a little bit here so you can see it a little closer. Hopefully we can see it a little better there. So this is just a typical example. Most of these are not super good stamps. Some of these, like up here, are from the 1800s, 1870s, and 80s, or before in some cases. It doesn't mean they're valuable just because they've made so many of them. So just keep that in thoughts as well, too, that you got to have consideration of how many of anything were made as to whether it's going to hold some sort of value. So that's just another take on these. So again, this is something most normal people should not mess with. They're just common, typical, types of stamps. Nothing spectacular in any way, shape, or form in any of these. Let's get a page that has a bunch on it. Again, next video, I'm going to just show a bunch of close-ups here. We're talking about the overall aspect first. I could talk about stamps for months, and I do mean months if I wanted to go in every detail. Again, this doesn't have a lot in it. There's very few content that would be worth anything. I would pass this up too. So anyway, let's zoom back out for just a second here, and we're going to show you a good book here. Now, this is what a nice version of the books look like. This is my Australian, or one of them. It's a two-part set here on this one here. You can see it's just it's a heavy book. It's well made. It's leather. Nice book here. This is just for Australia. This is the modern version. I'm going to show you an earlier version as well, too. This is what you want to look for if you're looking for a stamp book. Scott. That's one of the main brands here. These binders like this with these screw-ins that you can expand are also good, too. In fact, this one looks like it's a little loose. These come apart and you can actually add more pages into them. So this is the type you want. This is two-part set. Australia, they have them for America as well, the USA. That's the ones that I have also. I'm showing you these because I've got some Australian folks in here, and I thought it might be interesting to show what a nice collection looks like. Again, this isn't for brag purposes. Pay attention to the quantity in the book. Pay attention to how much early content is in the book. Now, I don't have hardly anything into this book. I actually kept this out of a purchase that I made, as well as its companion. In fact, let me pull that up here. This is the companion book. Again, it separates it into two different sections. This is just Australia, somewhere in that range. And this is what you're going to find. In fact, I said I was going to zoom in. Let's zoom back in here. so you can see the stamps a little better. So we'll just flip through here just for a minute, just so you can kind of see. This one had most of these, probably 90% of what you see in this book were in here when I bought it. And then I've added probably another 10% to it because I started to collect them because I had such a decent collection here. This is the official original starting section of Australia on the stamps. I know it might be a little hard to see it. So here we are a little closer so you can see it a little better. It's hard to focus on a camera and show you these, but this book was pretty well full of some decent looking stamps. It's got a lot of variety, even up into the high dollar stamps as well too. So this is the type of thing that I look for. These are all Australian. This is just Australia in this book here. So, and you can see the set goes on fairly well. It's got a large number of early stamps in here. But the best ones are the earliest ones, and we're going to get to those in just a second here. Let's fast forward. This goes on. It's got a lot of unused stamps in here. It's got a lot of BOBs back of the book, and they start from the very early time frame of Australia as well. Let's move on here so you can see some more in this. Hang on just a second here. It's got some military stamps as well from occupation in here. There's a couple other ones in the front of the book as well too. Then it goes into official stamps farther back into the book. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. This is the type of book you want. This right here is the page that sold me on this entire purchase here. This page here is worth around, say, $1,500. Just this page. And again, I have nothing pretty much into this whole collection. I bought a massive lot for $150 from a Craigslist call. People didn't have a clue. It was given to them. New South Wales was a state. Australia was broken down into states. Now, I may not have the history perfect on this, but these are some of the very first stamps. This is number one of the stamps and on and on. These are worth a ton of money on their own. These are very early issues. 1854, 1856, 59, 1860, 1860, 63. Again, there's at least $1,500 on this page. These early, basically crude looking, even with some damage, they're still worth some money. Let's see if you can't zoom in on these a little closer here. It's a pretty decent page right here. This alone's worth some decent money, in all honesty. Let's see how close we can get so you can get a better look at what these look like. These crude stamps are what you're looking for. So even if these were US and looked like that, similar. And again, this collection goes on with these. Hundreds of dollars in some of these stamps a piece. I bought it so cheap that I can sit here. I could pull out 1 or 2 stamps a month and sell a couple $100 off just like that. It goes down from there. It's got back of the books for New South Wales. Again, these are states. We go into Queensland, which I'll show you a couple of the early Queensland ones as well too. Obviously, these are fairly scarce, so it has the very first Queensland stamp ever made, the second one, and then the 6th one and on. So these are some very good stamps in here. Not $1,500 like the other one. It's a little scattered, sparse, but again, it only takes a couple. We're going to just flip through here just to give you an idea. More Queensland stamps. South Australia is another one here. And again, I've got number 2, number 3, number 6. These are all like expensive stamps. Some of these are a couple $100 minimum a piece. There's a couple on this page that are worth well over that. The cancellations, as well as we talked about in the last one, can add to the value. As well too. So hopefully you can kind of see what we're talking about here. You want the early ones, these generic looking ones. Imperforated, as I said, are probably the best ones here. They look just like the Canadian ones. Anything under the crown looks that way. There's a large grouping in this book. This is just probably one of the best assortments of this type I've ever gotten in my life, honestly. Here's a couple Tasmanian ones. These carry a decent value as well. Say $40-50 a piece on these here. Hopefully you can see those in there. Again, this is just what you expect. All this new stuff has almost no value in the big picture of things. There's some that, you know, I could pull out of here and get a few bucks for here and there. But this is how full you want a book to be if you're going to buy it. Don't screw around with the cheaper stuff. Now here's Western Australia too. Here's some nice swans. I'm bumping the camera all over the heck right here, but you could just see the swan ones. Some of these go for hundreds of dollars on these swan ones. The earlier the better. This one goes back to 1875. Again, you're going to have to take potluck on finding stuff like this, but these are the books you want. It's got some nice finished ones in here. It's got extra pages with stuff on the back. It's got commemoratives, special ones. You want to pay attention to books like that. Those are the books you want. Those are the books you're going to make your money on. You're also going to find vintage books. Let's back up here again. Okay, now here's a vintage one. Now this is the type you want to look for if you're looking for vintage ones. Now this book is early. Let me see here. What's the date on this one? Now you want books that date to the 1800s. If you're going to get some. This is 1902, so it's still an early one. And what you're looking for in these are stamps that weren't valuable then, that have now raised in value. So this one, someone snagged all of the early U.S. stamps out of it, but it has a large selection of foreign countries. I've started to pull some out of here, so there's not as many nearly as it was when I first bought it. Now this, you can tell the age on these. It has that same type of crown for British stamps, if you can see it up on there. That's literally what you're looking for on early books. If you see stuff with like Queen Vic in it or something like that, or early French stamps or something like that. Now again, most of these aren't worth a ton of money. You got to pay cheap on anything like this. I always look for the China, the Korea, those countries first. I look for France as well to see what's in there. Most of the South American countries are not worth much at all, like Guatemala or anything like that. Something like this you're still looking to purchase if it's got enough stamps in it. Full pages are what you want. Something that was very full. Anything like this is something I probably wouldn't spend more than, say, 15 or 20 bucks on at the most at a chance. So just think about it that way too, that the book has to be full to get it. Other areas, now we're going to show you another area that I always buy in. I buy stock binders and stock folders all the time. That's probably the best bet. Even if it's from a dealer, I still buy it. And these come full usually. But with stock books, you can find anything in it. And this is just an example. There's a lot of Hitler stamps in here, which, believe it or not, you can sell on eBay. Postage stamp collectors are not in any way collecting a German stamp for hate or anything like that. They're collecting it for the history because they're stamp collectors. I buy stamps in bulk like this. This is literally how some of these come in like this. Don't be shocked. You're going to find it in every single book that has any decent collection. It's going to have some Hitler stamps in it. Again, I'm not promoting, I'm against hate, I'm against violence, I'm against all that kind of stuff, but this is what you're going to find. But mixed in with these were these early ones. These are World War I overprints. So, and they're really nice set, really nice collection in here. This is the type of thing you want. Let's see if we can't get it where you can see it a little better. In fact, let me move the plastic off. Maybe that will help. There we go. So you can just kind of see what an overprint is. An overprint is when they take a stamp that's from their country or from another country and they print something else on it. This is for Belgium. It's 2 cents. It was worth 2 cents in Belgium. They repriced some of them too, so it was originally one price and it might be another one. And these ones down here are like German occupation of Bayern, which I don't think exists anymore. Just the same kind of thing. This is the type of thing that you're looking for in these books. And this is a exceptional book here, honestly. I've added many to it as well. But these early stamps, you want quality when you're buying stamps. You've got to have the quality. These are all still German or German states or German occupation. Some of these in this book are worth hundreds of dollars a piece as originals. Let's see how well you can see some of these. Like this set here is 1850s. It's Prussian. You're just going to have to get into stamps a little bit if you want to spend the time, but don't spend your money on cheap junk stamps. Spend some time researching what you're going to buy and knowing. I separate them, obviously, in these books, too, not just buy them in these books. So pay attention to stuff like this. Stock books are almost always better source of this material. I wish you could see these a little better. So what you want are these early stamps in here, and you can see, unfortunately, some of these slide around. Let's move this out of the way. There's early Canadians from the 1860s. There's quality stamps in these types of books more so than other ones. No, it's a little hard to see. I can't show you close-ups on all of this. It would just be impossible. Now here's a really nice assortment of 1850s U.S. stamps up here on the top. This is the type of thing you're looking for. This will make you far more money than anything past 1900, these early style stamps. And I've talked about some of the special cancellations. People will collect just how it's marked on the front. Some of the cancellations, that one's in blue ink. Hopefully you can see that a little bit there. I know it's a little hard and awkward. This is stamp number 11 of the U.S. stamps. These book at $11 or $12 on average for the low end, and I've got quite a few of them here. And then there's the second impression of the same one that has perforations on them. And then we go into the Civil War, 1850s and thereabouts. And you can see some of the special cancels like I've talked about in the past. And you should be able to see some of the fancy cancels, like something like that, or the star pattern on that. That makes stuff worth more money. These are bullseyes on these. Here is like a cross pattern on that one. Here's a nice cork cancel. There's a nice plus. All of those add to the value. Like this one down in the very bottom right there. Let's see how close we can get to that. There, hopefully you can kind of see these. That's the type of stamps you're looking for. You're looking for these early stamps. Multiple colored early images. Even if they're on paper, off paper, all of this stuff adds. There's a real nice star one up on the top, if you can see it here, right there. That one's an awesome cancellation. That one alone will be worth some money. So will that one. So will that one. These paid ones go for 15 or 20 bucks at least, just for that cancellation. So that's just a little more to look for on these. This is one of my better books here on this type of material. And again, it goes on. There's varieties in here. There's just a ton of material in this book, honestly. Let's move on from here. Again, this is just what you're looking for. Multiples, varieties. This is a stock book, so you're going to find tons of the same ones. Has little markings on which variety are in here. Same as this, because many stamps look identical, but they're not. There's tiny little things that dictate when they were made. Some stamps that look identical could have been made, 10 years apart even. Like on this page, you've got one type here, a second different type here, a third type here, and then a fourth type here. Now here's commemoratives like the Columbian Exposition stamps. These I bulk up on sometimes too. You can sell these in lots. Now here we have some Columbian Expositions, some commemoratives. Again, I buy these in bulk too sometimes. I can sell them in bulk as well. Just more examples of them. The higher the denomination on this series here, the more they go for actually. So again, I know this is kind of hard and awkward, but here's some back of the books. These are 1850s-ish, most of these. Early Washingtons. Look at the stamps and the style of these stamps. These are the styles that you want. These are the early ones. So, and they do go on for quite a ways. I do have quite an assortment of these. So, again, just some more examples of these certificate stamps, back of the book stamps. Here's some airmail stamps, including, let's show you these here, because I actually have the very first airmail stamp collection. These right here are the very first 6 airmail stamps. There's one extra one. Here's some earlier ones as well, too. This is a pretty good page. I mean, this is literally what I buy. This is what you want. These full assortments like this. Here's some interesting ones, too. These are from the Hawaiian Islands before it was owned by or part of the United States. Interesting. Here's some duck stamps as well, too. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that I buy. I've got U.S. possessions, Philippine Islands, when the U.S. government printed them. It goes on and on. Here's some other examples of some things to look for. Now these, let me see, let's get the cover off here. These are plate blocks. Let's go into this page here for just a minute here. This could be helpful. Okay, now this page will be helpful here too. This is some terminology on you. This is a imperforated pair where there's no perforations between the actual stamps. So literally you would have to cut these apart on this one here. Now I don't have tongs with me, but you can pretty much see it there, I think. No stamp or perforations between them. Imperf pairs usually go for a decent amount of money. There's also gutter pairs, which means there's a big blank section. You'll see like a piece this big between 2 stamps. Another thing to look for too when you're buying stamps are high dollar ones from say pre-1920 or at least 1940s. Let's get you up close here. So here's just a perfect example of some. This is a $5 stamp. Used like this, and it's got a perforation cancel in it as well too, like a pre-cancel. That's like a $20 or $30 stamp. The other $5 stamps about the same thing too. Look for the high dollar used stamps if you're going to look for any vintage old used stuff. The higher dollar, the better. Here's some like $1 ones there. Those are at least better than most. So you want the high dollar stamps also. Here's just some other ones here, Cuban stamps, which you cannot sell Cuban stamps at all. So I've been hoarding all the early ones when I get them. I've got some of the very first Cuban stamps. So this is just a good example of a nice stock book. So that's what you want to find are these stock books here. Here's another one. I mean, this is just a perfect example of what we buy. You want them loaded. You want a ton of stamps in the books. You want them loaded. You want a ton of stamps in the books. It's kind of hard to show you these this way, but they're well taken care of. You want a nice assortment like these. They all are vintage. They're not colorful stamps. They're monotone. They've got early Queen Victoria in them. I mean, this is all key to it. You see early Chinese characters in it. Look at the tones. None of these are colorful. They're all basically one color. Those are the stamps you want to look for the most. That will dictate whether they're old or not for the most part. These are all early stamps from various countries, including unused ones. But again, look at the overall tone of the page. They're all the same basic color tone across the board. Inks were expensive back then. This is a typical example. I've got Chinese in here. The whole works. It's just a nice assortment of stamps in here. This is what you're looking for again. These type. This is just another stock book. I've got 50 stock books like this probably. I could sell stamps for months on end when I start into them. Some of these have some stamps that we're moving around in them too, or we've already sold some. So I use stock books like this to sort stamps and to categorize them to list later so I can list like items. This is something you're going to have a bunch of if you do this drastically. Otherwise, you're just going to be selling big lots of them. So anyway, little stock books too you can run into like these, where there's some decent assortments of things in them. Again, this isn't anything super or spectacular in this aspect of it, but it's got some decent early stamps in it, including some high dollar and some commemoratives. So early ones. A lot of these aren't used, unused stamps in here, and they're early airmail stamps. And it's got some nice early 1910s and before stamps in it too. So this is just another example of these. These wouldn't be something I'd spend much money on, you know, but this is what I look for most all. Nice assortments, monotone stamps for the most part, nothing colorful, early images of kings, queens, Chinese characters, overprints of Chinese characters in them. Just perfect example of stuff that I look for. Russian stamps, you can just kind of tell right there. In fact, so you can see. Now these are early Russian stamps, circa 1917-ish, Revolutionary era. But again, this is what I buy. This has some really early ones in it too. I got a bad pocket there, but you can kind of see. Here's an error stamp actually here. I don't remember the number on this one, but the white should have been over here on this side to be where he was, and it was actually printed wrong. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a white spot right there that shouldn't be there. Worth a little more than most. Here's an imperforated sheet. In fact, I think I can get this one out. This is something you would look for. These are actually stamps that they would cut out, and then you could mail separately if you wanted, but it was made to be sold like that. And then here are booklet stamps up here on the top too. You'll see these as well. Let me see if I can get them out without hurting them. So this is literally from a booklet of stamps. This sells just like it is. You wouldn't want to take it apart. It's got perfect gum, never been used. Another perfect example. Now next to it here is the same stamps, but from a sheet. It's perforated all the way around the edges. This has flat edges, so that's another thing to look for too. Just some other examples of multi-blocks of stamps. Those are usually better than most, so if you find some early, like this one's China stamps, to have a block of them is fairly scarce. That one's a pretty decent one too. Just some other examples of stamps here. United Nations, more British. Again, I've got tons of books like this, so these are what I look for the most. And you can still see that the biggest factor in these is that they're all the same monotone color. That's the stamps you want. You don't want big, bright, beautiful stamps. You want these dull and monotone stamps for the most part. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. You'll also find binders where they're just on loose leaf paper and then people have collected and wrote numbers. These are also early stamps in here. These are British stamps here. But there's a nice variety of them in here. They're all ID'd. You can see some of the prices on here even say $1,600 up at the top here. So at one time there was $1,600 of value on this page. I hope you can see that. You can see the 1600 up there at the top. These are literally some nice collection of them here. I have not even looked up most of these as of yet, even just because I can buy huge quantities of these. Now, these are just a variety collection is what it is. And you can see just how many of these are on here. So I'm sure there's some really nice varieties in here. That's the type of thing you want to get. Some hand cancels. They're early 1870s or 80s. Again, they've ID'd them all for you in this type of book. Here's some nice early ones up here as well, too. These are more of the valuable type on here, too. They've got some prices on here, too, and literally a bunch of prices, honestly. Some of these look very high priced on here, too. So this is the type of book I literally run into. So for those of you from Australia, you should recognize the Queen on there. Again, one of these pages or some of these stamps on here could be worth, say, a couple $100 a piece. If you see the prices over here, there's another one for $175. Again, that was then. This is an early book. This book was probably put together 50 or 60 years ago. These are 1 penny British stamps, 1850s, 60s. A very, very, very nice assortment here. So this is what I look for. An average person wouldn't think much of this. This is just in some ratty out book. At an estate sales where I bought this, and I spent $10 on this book, mind you. They had no price on it. They did not price the bookshelf. That's one area I always gravitate to. That's one reason why I don't tell too many people on stuff like this, because most people miss these books in there because they think they would be in a stamp book. That is not the case. Most of the better stuff are not in stamp books, in my personal opinion. Yeah, you're going to run into a stamp book here or there, but usually they try and cherry pick those out. They don't cherry pick these too often. Now it goes into some newer ones in here too, but that first few pages makes up for anything else later on in this book. It's just a phenomenal. And in fact, here's some more Army official ones from like the early war eras. Very nice, honest, original assortment of British stamps in here. There's some Counselor Service stamps down at the bottom. So just variety-wise is what you're looking for on these. Army official there at the top. Let's see here. Again, this is just a nice example. Some occupational ones. Here's a Hong Kong, China, British stamp up there on the top. That one's well worth looking out for. Again, some of these may not have been worth something back when this book was put together, but nowadays they carry a high value. So again, most of the books like this are where I make most of my money, just cheapo binders like this. Let's see what this one is. Again, I buy these sometimes 10, 20 of these at a time. There's just more of these. It's just the best ones to look for on these because most people haven't had a chance to look through these. If they're full like this as well, I doubt someone's dug through and pulled them out because they had to have resorted them. So once you get a good idea on value, you can go after these a little better than that. And I can't go into value on each one of these. It would just be impossible. There's just a couple million different stamps, but you want to be able to buy them in quantity like that. And it's just, again, this is just what I bought recently. There's just recent purchases on here. Sometimes I'll yank out pages out of the book, like these Syrian ones or early Syria ones. This 3 stamps here are in the $200 range for those 3 stamps. And that's usually how I'll do it. I'll yank out pages out of these. You're not going to sell most vintage stamp books as a stamp book. It would be impractical. So, again, that's what you got to think about when you're doing this. And again, the earlier the better on these. There's some Serbia 1860s in here. So literally that's what I look for, the earlier ones. Early to use should be pre-1900. Now this is cancellations, pre-cancels. These are stamped, canceled before they're actually sold. So once you get them in there, they're already on the envelope and you don't have to worry about canceling. This is for like companies that do this. Now some of these I've run into that were worth a lot of money because of the one company that used them. So you just got to pay attention. And they're not even in the right book, and most people wouldn't pay much attention to these type of just used stamps in here. But it holds a high value on these sometimes too. So again, pre-cancels, they were canceled before they were given or sold, so that once you stuck them on an envelope, you couldn't use them again anyway. So anyway, let's move on. And then just another example. Again, these are the type of books where I make most of my money at. If everybody else is looking at the stamp books, I'm going to go after these. And some of them are really nice stamps in here as well, too. Somebody's written some of the numbers on them. It's a large assortment. This was a $10 purchase here. I would put these out and pull out like whole sets, and I could sell those for 10 or so bucks a piece for the set. It's just a nice assortment of stuff in here. This is what you want to look for if you're buying new stamps, newer ones like this. And I know these may not be new to you, but this is what I look for. These style of stamps here, if I'm going to buy them in books like this. Again, 5 or 10 bucks on a book like this without a problem for the most part. So, and it's a lot of stamps, a bunch of unused stamps, dated stamps, war era stamps, monotone, Italian, and there's multiples of each one. These are occupational ones over here. I don't remember exactly what the AMG stands for, but this is American Occupational Stamps of Italy after the war, from if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, nice issues. There's some Russian ones up at the top, CCCP. Again, they're not all valuable. This is, though, quantity, and it does have some decent covers and things like that that you won't find in other ones, like this one here. It's like a first day cover, so. And yeah, just another binder again. The binders are what you want. Let's fix that one up in there. So, you know, early stamps. Again, early stamps in these. Early stamps in these. Monotone stamps. All one color. Look for that. That's probably one of the key things you can tell, because after a certain date, they issued them in multiple colors. Now, this one has some other pages in the back. Goes back into the 1890s on these. Again, they're South American, though, so they're not worth a ton of money on these. So don't be fooled by that. But if they're cheap enough, they're worth it. You can sell them still by groups and bunches.